I better go before Kerry divorces me.
Oh yeah, it's late as fuck, isn't it? I didn't realise the time.
She's been stranded up in the bedroom,
up in the attic, banished to the loft.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Hello and welcome to episode 28 of the Scratchcast, the occasional alternative music podcast. Probably should stop with that joke. Kind of been flogging it the last few episodes.
When did we do this last? Like March, April.
Was it April? Anyway.
Yeah, that's the fourth month, isn't it?
It's quite a while ago. So, who cares?
We're here nevertheless, Snedds. We're here
now. Who cares? It's all good. I'm Snedds, and as always, I'm joined by slab layer extraordinaire, Mr. Grant Patterson.
Four brilliantly laid. Laid.
The thing is, I was desperately trying to think of something to put in there, and I was like, "Oh, he was laying in slabs the other day," and then I was genuinely quite disappointed there was only like 4 slabs. But
I know. Like mine are laid really well. They're all level, but the only problem is the rest of the slabs out in the garden are all higgledy-piggledy. And I kind of mentioned it to Boff the other day, and he was like, we could do them next summer." And I was like, nah. I'm not doing that. Like, it's just not worth the time or effort. You can crack on. You can do it. He can do it. But I'm not getting involved.
Fair enough. Apart from your slab laying, how have you been, Granny boy?
I've been good. Trying to think what I've done apart from laying slabs since the last time we did this. Not been to all that many gigs, other than as we kind of spoke about it last time, went to see Taylor Swift, which was I actually enjoyed that a lot more than I expected to. I know I'm probably going to get quite a lot of hate for saying that, but yeah, haters going to hate. I think it was really good. It was really good. And I mean, well, you'll know yourself, like Kat probably got an influx of customers and that coming her way just from her being in the city, like being in Edinburgh and being in Scotland, I would imagine. Yeah,
it was like Swifty mania or whatever. Like,
it's like an economic phenomenon. Like, apparently she brings, like, just from her like playing in a town, country, whatever, like it brings so much money into the country's economy. You would have got a lot of Americans, because apparently it was cheaper for Americans to come to the European tour than to see her in America.
Which is mental, isn't it? It's absolutely mental.
Like, you know what? Like, I did enjoy it. Like, I enjoyed it a lot more than I expected to. And also, one thing I will say is it's probably one of the nicest crowds I've ever been in. Like, probably one of the kind of most accepting crowds I've ever been in. Sounds a bit naff, but there was a lot of love there. You know what I mean? And I don't think I've ever been in an environment or a gig where, you know, young children, like young girls and that were coming up to me and exchanging like bracelets and stuff like that. There was no fighting, not that I saw. There might have been, but I think it's probably unexpected. You know what I mean? Obviously, you'll probably know Edinburgh was like gridlocked for a good few hours after the gig. Like, I think we left the gig maybe about 10:30, something like that. We didn't get home till about 2. The walk to Haymarket was rammed with people. A lot of folk kind of getting difficulty, kind of getting on the trains and kind of getting on the trams and stuff like that. But everyone just kind of got on with it. Like, I think it maybe, again, you know, this is maybe a bit of a sweeping generalisation, but I think if it was maybe another crowd, you know, folk might have kind of kicked off about that, but everybody just kind of got on with it, which was quite nice.
Yeah, I mean, I was in Glasgow that night, but I remember so I came into Glasgow sort of early afternoon, and there were like crowds of people like kitted out in their cowboy outfits or whatever, heading the opposite direction. So I imagine it would have been pretty mental. in Edinburgh, but I kind of missed most of it.
Avoided it.
On at least on the Friday I missed it. I think there was videos of the trams going past absolutely rammed full of people and stuff as well. So yeah, I didn't get caught up in the mania though.
The hubbub. Yeah, it was really good. Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily rush out and go and see her again, but I imagine if she was to play Scotland again, I'd probably get dragged along to it. She's playing Wembley tonight. I think she's playing London, kind of following. I think there was a few gigs called off in Vienna, following a kind of suspected kind of terrorist attack. I don't know if it's any way related. Well, I don't think it is related, to be honest, to kind of what happened in kind of Southport in England. But yeah,
no idea.
A lot of shit connected with it.
Yeah, I saw that.
Which is a shame.
There's a lot of people like crying their eyes out that they couldn't go to see Taylor Swift, but which is fair enough when you've kind of planned your whole year. You've maybe been planning it,
year.
But then at the same time, it's like, well, you could have gone and you could have died, or like. Or lots of other people could have died, so it puts it into context, I guess.
You need to put it in context, and I suppose there's that kind of, you need to do that kind of cost-benefit analysis, don't you? Like, yeah, sure, I missed out from seeing her, but yeah, I'm still alive. But yeah, she's obviously got quite a lot of heat recently, which is a bit unfair. And again, it kind of goes back to her appeal, and I think people will hate. There's a lot of, and I think it is all kind of wrapped up in, there's a lot of kind of misogynistic incel shit around the dislike of her as an artist and stuff like that, which I think's kind of unfair. A lot of kind of internet trolls and stuff like that giving her a lot of shit online, following the postponed gigs in Vienna, well, the cancelled gigs in Vienna, because they haven't been postponed, they've just been outright cancelled. But you've got like people saying like, "Damn it, so close" and stuff like that, and you're like, "Fuck off."
That's a bit in poor taste, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Anyway, I've just went off in a tirade. What other gigs have you been to?
Well, I was going to say I was gonna like leave the gigs to later on, but since you started talking about Taylor Swift, I might as well just do it now. So, I was in Glasgow that same night to see James. For our mutual friend Dave Pearce's 50th birthday.
The one and only,
which made me feel very old. Even though he's a lot, he's a good
13 years older than us.
Yeah, he's a good
13 years older than me, 12 years.
So alright, okay. You just needed to make that distinction. I don't think I would have bought tickets to go and see James off my own back. They're not a sort of band of, I know a few songs just because they had a few big hits back in the day. So it was a good excuse for a bit of day drinking. It's always nice. And the gig itself was pretty good. I mean, I suppose they played all the hits. I only know maybe 2 or 3 songs. So they played Laid and Sit Down. They opened with, well, at the time I was like, I recognise the song, I don't know what it's called. I think it was She's a Star. I think that's what it's called.
Oh yeah, I know that song. Yeah.
I think that's the one they played first, at least. So, I mean, it was in the Hydro, so pretty big venue. Support was Razorlight, which was also a bit of a blast from the past,
isn't it?
For James, they're not really.
Kind of don't see the connection there, but
no, Razorlight, they were all right. I mean, again, it was sort of. I liked a few of their songs back in the day. They played them, that was good, and then the rest of the time it's like, I don't know these songs. Well, they did play a song which was just like full-on 70s psychedelica, which was like, yeah, that's pretty good. Other than that, they were Razorlight and sort of what you expect Razorlight to be like, so they were okay. And James were decent. Tim Booth, I think, was the front man. He's sort of shuffling about on stage, like that seems to be his sort of dancing style. That's not a sort of ageist comment. I think that's just the way. He sort of boogies on stage. So, I can't really fault them.
Dave Pearce was lucky enough to meet Tim Booth as well, wasn't he? Like on a few days before the gig in Aberdeen, I think.
Is that where he met him? I know he had... Yeah, because he went and saw... He saw him up in Aberdeen as well, didn't he? He had a whole birthday week, I think.
Aye. And apparently, from what Dave Pearce has kind of said to us afterwards, like he got on really well with because I met Dave Pearce and Jen the night before the Taylor Swift and James gig, and they were away to see 30 Seconds to Mars
that
right, night.
Yeah.
And he was saying that he was lovely, whereas I think he's kind of notoriously not. Like, I don't think he generally has kind of much time for his fans. So I've heard anyway. I don't know, but maybe he's kind of softened.
Yeah, softened as the years gone by. So yeah, if you like sort of 90s rock music, then yeah, James are pretty good. I went to see, who else did I go to see? I've been to another gig. It was Dune, the band Dune, Edinburgh band Dune, spelled DVNE. I think I might have talked briefly about on here before, I can't remember, but I'm sure I've brought them up at some point. They're a progressive metal band, extreme metal band, and their music's sort of based on the Dune series, the Frank Herbert Dune series. Although I'm saying that, I haven't delved into the lyrics or anything of their songs to see how they kind of all of that correlates. I'm sure you could, but yeah, I went to see them. They were touring their new album Voidkind, so went to see that. Really good band, really tight band, just impeccable musicians, and they're playing mad, complex metal and singing. It was just, yeah, it was really impressive. The most impressive thing was the jumping about between the vocalists. So there's a guitarist, a lead guitarist and a sort of secondary guitarist, however you want to put it, and they both did parts of the vocals. And then there's a bassist. I don't think he had any vocals, but they obviously had a drummer, and they had a guy on the synths who did some backing vocals as well. So there's essentially three people doing vocals, and specifically when they were doing the screaming parts, they were sort of doing these call and answer screams, where one guy would scream and then you would get the screaming from the other side of the stage, and then you would get it from the back, from the, not behind us, but from the back of the stage, from the synth player. And it was just really impressive the way they sort of did that in the live environment. I was impressed by that. So
I quite like the idea of that, actually. It'd be quite good to see.
It was just, it was cool just the way that sort of jumped around the stage. But if you like progressive metal, extreme metal, lots of screaming, it's sort of it's that progressive metal thing where it's it's quite sort of gentle and ethereal, and then it goes through sort of waves of that and then gets really heavy. So if you like that kind of thing, then Dune, definitely check out their album Voidkind. That's their latest album, and yeah, if you get a chance to go and see them, I would definitely go. And weirdly, I also went to see Dune the musical last night, just on a bit of a whim, because you were busy doing your slabs, and we were going to be recording this, but you cancelled due to a slab emergency. So
slab emergencies.
So I went to see Dune the musical, which was also a little bit metal. It was kind of it was just one guy with a 12-string guitar in a small room in the back of a record shop in Edinburgh. Slow Progress Records. It's a record and coffee shop on, I think it's Blackfriars Street. It's part of the free Fringe, so it was totally free. And yeah, it's just one guy, 12-string guitar, singing a bunch of songs about the first book in the Dune series, or the first film, or technically, if from the recent films, it's 2 films. So anyway, it's the first book, and I think if you watch the films and you enjoy that kind of thing, you probably get a lot out of it. But I think it's more tailored to people who'd read the books, or at least a bit more of the series, because there's a lot of sort of knowing winks to like things that would happen later in the series that weren't in the first book. So like, you know, I haven't got any examples, but there were some jokes that relied on you knowing things that would happen to certain characters and things that happen outside that first book. So it was really quite good, really intense. It was like a sort of like a folk tale, and delivered in a sort of folky style at times, and then it would go really quite heavy, albeit on as heavy as you can get with one guy on a
12-string guitar.
On a 12-string acoustic guitar. But yeah, really intense. And at one point he was dancing about with like a with like a devil mask sort of thing. It was like a painted black like pig mask.
Right.
Something like that. And that
Did you
was
just
like,
witness one man's mental breakdown?
well, I mean, it could have been, but that was definitely
Expertly done.
It was good. I mean, it was very sort of intense, and it was like you could see a few looks on some people's faces were like, what have I got myself into here? But you know, 10 out of 10 for like the performance of it, because he went all in on it. So yeah, that was pretty good. And I like I said, it was a free fringe, so you could donate at the end, but he was selling, I don't know if you can see that. Can you see that?
Yeah, I can see it now, yeah.
So he's selling.
He should have been wearing the worm suit, man.
Yeah, I was a little
should have
bit
been
disappointed there
wearing
were
the
no worm suits, but so I picked up Dune the musical on cassette, so that was pretty good.
Have you read the books?
I've read 4 out of 6 of the.
Right, okay.
So there's 2 like original trilogies. So there's the original Dune trilogy, and then there's like a second trilogy that Frank Herbert also wrote. So I've read the first book. So I've read the first trilogy, and then I'm the first book into the second trilogy, which takes place like thousands of years after the originals. And then I think there's a whole bunch of other books that is written partly by his son and another science fiction writer, but I think they get kind of shat on. I don't know if they're all that great.
I've never read them, but I watched the new movies and really enjoyed them. It's kind of made me want to go back and read the books, but I never realised that the books were released like quite a while ago. Like I wouldn't say like 70s, maybe.
I'm not sure when the first one came out, but it's definitely, I think the last one I read was like in the early 80s. So I think it just finished God Emperor of Dune. I think that came out in the 80s. So likely the 70s, if not earlier, for the first book.
Aye, like just to put things in perspective, and again, I never realised this until, you know, I'd watched the movies, just reading up about a bit about them, reading up about the kind of source material and stuff like that. But Frank Herbert and J.R.R. Tolkien existed in the same space for a little while, to the point where J.R.R. Tolkien like commented on some of the Dune books, which kind of blows my mind a wee bit.
What, like on his Facebook page or something?
On his Facebook page, Insta. I just think that's weird. I always think of like J.R. Tolkien kind of being dead and buried by like.
You almost
World
don't
War
think
II.
of him as being like a real person. It's almost
Yeah.
it is kind of weird. You sort of think of these authors as just being these sort of like, I was going to say mythical beings, but I think I'm taking that a little bit too far. But you don't really think of them as being real people. The you know, people who've written these like grand epics. You don't sort of think of
came
them as
up
being
with
people.
languages and universes and all these different species and stuff like that. Yeah, religions, I suppose, with regards to Dune to a certain extent. Yeah,
it's pretty wild. Anyway, I think we've
nattered on for long enough.
We've nattered on for long enough. So, but we don't need to come back to the gigs later. So that's fine.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed and failed.
They tried and died.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
So anyway, What do we have for you on this month's show? On our single swap, we're discussing The Sink by indie folk duo Hey Nothing, and Danzig With Myself by your favourite specialists in car advert music, the Dandy Warhols, featuring of course the legendary Frank Black. We're not going to talk about the gigs we've been to recently because we've just done that. But we are bringing the digital corkboard back briefly. There's a couple of things I'd like to talk about. And we've got our album reviews. Divine Accusations from Belfast-based rockers Black Opal. Can't Hate You Forever from Dartmouth, Halifax 4-piece Safeword. You're Just Jealous from Leeds and York-based indie punks Crumbs. A Bolt from the Blue from post-hardcore punks Modern Shakes, and Apricity from Brighton's post-rock, progressive metal, post-hardcore quintet VOWER. I make it hard for myself to read these things. I don't make it easy for myself. So, let's get into the single swap then. So, as always on every episode, we give each other a song to listen to for discussion on the next podcast. On the last episode, I gave Grant the song Danzig With Myself by the Dandy Warhols featuring Frank Black, and Grant gave me The Sink by Hey Nothing. I think that should be how it's pronounced. It's got a comma in it. So, Grant,
do you want me just to jump straight in it?
Yes.
Yeah, so Snedds was in there, he gave me Danzig With Myself, and I think I made a comment on how it should be a bit like the kind of Billy Talent song, because I think it was, I don't know, I obviously got confused. I thought it was called like Danzig By Myself, but Danzig With Myself is kind of similar to the kind of, not Billy Talent,
I was about to say
song. Billy Idol song. Yeah. So this was released way back at the start of the year. So it was released on the 16th of January 2024, and it's just under 4 minutes long at 3 minutes and 55 seconds. As Snedds says there, it features the legendary Frank Black. So it also features as track number 2 on the band's latest studio album, Rockmaker, which was released on the 15th of March this year on Sunset Boulevard Records. The album also features Slash and Debbie Harry as well. So according to the frontman Courtney Taylor, this song kind of started with a riff that either sounded like Misfits or Danzig and then got slowed down, and apparently Danzig With Myself became a bit of a working title that was just kind of too good to replace. That came from an article that I read in Consequence website by a guy by the name of Spencer Kaufman. So overall, their album was the manifestation of their desire to hear a record of heavy raw punk and metal riffs, but it has its own alley. As with this song itself, so it kind of opens with kind of stuttering electronics, which is slowly followed by a kind of languid, kind of plodding, fuzzed up guitar, which for my money was kind of reminiscent of some of the tracks on the likes of kind of Trompe Le Monde, which was the Pixies' third studio album, I believe. Fourth studio album. But to be fair, it's almost became part of the kind of Pixies kind of signature sound, to be honest. We are kind of pioneers in that kind of avant-garde kind of alt rock style. There is a kind of slight brightness in the melody that just kind of punctuates that kind of fuzzed up reverby guitar, which I thought was quite nice. The vocals kick in around the kind of 30-second mark with kind of Frank Black's unmistakable voice. You can tell immediately that it's him. The chorus, they've got kind of like high pitch vocals, which again has become a bit of a kind of signature move of kind of Frank Black's, and it's kind of reminiscent of the type of stuff that he did in the likes of Gigantic, for example, which is kind of one of the Pixies' biggest hits. With regards to, you know, I suppose the kind of working title or kind of final title of the song, I think there is some sort of kind of correlation with the lyrics, because the kind of lyrical content does seem to kind of channel some kind of horror rock aesthetic. The chorus being, should anyone be alive then, should anyone want to even try to survive it, if we're lucky enough instead to be more grateful than the dead are. So again, kind of has that kind of similar kind of horror rock kind of feel to it. The song kind of grinds along, but it's kind of difficult to pick out any hooks, I suppose. I didn't feel as if there was all that much to kind of really sink your teeth into. I would say it's overall it's not a bad song, but there's nothing about it that really kind of stood out for me.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you on that. I don't think it's a bad song. I just feel there's a bit of a lack of variety.
Yeah.
It's got that kind of. It's got quite a cool intro, like weird kind of guitar feedback and whatnot, and then it just goes into that main riff, and it just kind of sticks with that for the entire song. And it's almost 4 minutes long, so you kind of want a bit more variety over 4 minutes. Yeah. And they have a wee bit of like, the odd guitar lick in there, but other than that, it doesn't really change it up that much. So I think maybe if they'd been able to like tighten it up to like 3 minutes or something like that, it maybe be a bit more enjoyable, because there's definitely like a big instrumental gap between the repetition of the verse and the chorus. So you get the verse and the chorus happen, and then you've got a long instrumental section before it happens again, and it's just like you probably could have tightened that up a bit. Yeah, I kind of found myself losing interest a little bit while I was waiting for that to happen. But I just thought it was a cool idea for the Dandy Warhols to be collaborating with Frank Black, or at least it could. There's potential for it to be quite interesting, and given that I would think of the Dandy Warhols as being a fairly safe band, not that I really know anything about them other than Bohemian Like You. And I was, but the joke that I had about them being specialists in car advert music is probably a bit unfair, given that I don't really know much of their music at all. But
I know that song, and like I seem to remember like another single that was released not long after that. But interestingly, I'm pretty sure they were touring. Maybe kind of said this at the time when you kind of gave this single to me to review, but I'm pretty sure they were touring with the Black Angels, which is
I think you did say that, didn't you?
Which I think they were supporting the Black Angels.
Yeah,
I think that's a weird coupling, like a wee bit like James and Razorlight. I suppose you wouldn't necessarily put them both in the same camp, but yeah, it does make you wonder, because I suppose like this offering is probably more within the kind of Black Angels type camp than Bohemian Like You. So I wonder if this is a kind of a shift in direction. I admit I haven't listened to the album.
No, I mean I think I skipped through it a little bit before even I gave you this single to listen to. I think I'd kind of skipped through it and thought it's alright. And there wasn't really anything that sucked me in to want to go back to it. I thought the idea that they were collaborating with Frank Black and Slash and Debbie Harry and was quite a cool idea, but I didn't really bother to listen to it properly or to go back to it really.
I suppose it is unfair of me to kind of comment on the album, but when you think if this is a single from the album, it's meant to obviously entice you to want to listen to the album as a whole. Like, it seems as if it's, I don't know, working with Frank Black, it does seem like a kind of opportunity missed, as you said.
A little bit.
I think they could have done more.
And I think that's right, albeit it's an alright song, and it's definitely more reminiscent of the Pixies than it is the Dandy Warhols. But it's not like, I suppose from if you're looking at the Pixies or Frank Black, it's not a like brilliant song from either of them. It's just sort of one of the forgettable filler tracks, maybe.
Yeah,
maybe that's harsh.
Yeah, I think that's pretty fair to say, to be honest. I mean, I did give it a rating. Yeah, I was like 4 or 5 out of 10, which does seem pretty harsh, but
Yeah, I mean, I gave it a 7 because I was like,
what?
I quite liked it, but then maybe the way I've talked about it, I probably am being generous with that. Because I did like the opening lyrics where he's like, some days it's just so obvious, some days it's insidious, but half the people alive today are fucking idiots. Like, it's a really good opening line, and the sort of weird warbling on the vocals reminded me of Planet of Sound, which is from Top Trump Mond, as you mentioned. So yeah, maybe I was just I don't know. I've given it 7 anyway. I can't go back on it.
You can't go back on it now, man.
It's
there. It's there in writing.
I would agree that it's a bit of a missed opportunity.
Aye.
But it's not a bad song. I can't even remember what a 4 or a 5 is on our rating. I'll have to go back and check. But it's not good. It's not very good, I don't think.
No, I mean 5's pretty middle of the road, isn't it?
It's probably somewhere like a bit meh or something like that.
Well, yeah, that's it. That I think that word epitomises how I feel about it. It's just a bit like, it's fine. It's fine. It's just fine.
So, if you want to listen to a song that's just fine, then yeah, you can't go wrong with this.
And not fine in the fucking northeastern Aberdonian type of way.
Oh, that's fine. That's awful.
Oh, that's fine, man. That's like the fucking highest praise you can ever give. That's fine, man. Aye. It's just usual, normal, fine.
Yeah, it's fine. Yeah, and it doesn't really sound like Danzig or
no, it doesn't.
the Misfits at all, to be fair.
No, but I mean, like, I think there is some sort of kind of vague kind of horror punk aesthetic woven into the chorus in some shape or form. Maybe it's just the mention of the word dead. That's maybe it. That's maybe how far it goes. Yeah.
Fair enough. Right. Okay. So that was "Danzig With Myself" by the Dandy Warhols. What?
Slammed.
Binned. Not quite binned. That's not fair. So yeah, the Dandy Warhols, "Danzig With Myself," featuring Frank Black. Okay, so the song that you gave me is The Sink by Hey Nothing, who are an indie folk band from Athens, Georgia. The band are a two-piece made up of Tyler Mabry and Harlow Phillips, and they've been recording music together since high school, apparently. The duo released their debut album, We Are Starting to Look Like Each Other, on Halloween last year, and their latest EP, Main, dropped on the 21st of June this year, so not that long ago. The Sink was the first single released ahead of the new EP, and has been out since the 10th of April, and it's also the first track on the EP. It's roughly 3 minutes long, and it's released on Music Soup and Good Luck Have Fun Records. So the song opens with a driving acoustic guitar before introducing a sort of nasally slacker vocal that reminded me a little bit of Violent Soho, who I seem to reference quite a lot on this podcast, but it seems to be appropriate quite regularly. There's that sort of a little bit of a sort of Billy Corgan-ism to it. And there's a bit of a kind of punk rock, alt rock vibe in the sort of delivery of that, albeit an acoustic one, and you kind of feel like it could burst into this electrified punk rock song at any moment, but they just stay acoustic, and that initial drive is bolstered by crashing drums and rumbling bass. And it reminded me a little bit of band Angel Dust, who I think I've mentioned briefly before, and how they sort of take an acoustic approach to hardcore punk. There's still that kind of drive of that kind of music, but it's all delivered acoustically. So it's an interesting take. But rather than sort of continuing on with this sort of punk rock, it switches to a kind of bouncy, almost like Mumford and Sonsy kind of bridge, which initially I found to be quite jarring, especially in the way the vocals were delivered, but actually, having got used to it after a few listens, it actually becomes quite a powerful moment. And you then get the second verse bringing in this sort of piercing riff of jabbing banjo with this cheeky lick at the end of it, and it's a really nice addition to that main riff, and it just reinforces that kind of folksy element to, you know, the sort of banjo, the Mumford and Sonsy kind of thing, but it's still got a bit of a punk sort of edge, which again reminded me of another artist, Amigo the Devil, who does these sort of acoustic murder ballads. So it's acoustic, but it's very much punk as well. The latter half of the song's got a bit of Me Rex in there, a bit of Porridge Radio maybe, and there's a sort of repeated section you could probably call the chorus, although the structure's not really verse, chorus, verse really, but there is a sort of chorus there. And the lyrics throughout are like, they're like an open letter to an estranged family member or a friend with an addiction. There's a couple of lines in particular that jumped out at me. Don't bother putting me in your 12 steps. I don't need a letter to know the truth, which resonated with me on a personal level. But my favourite part by far is the intertwining of the dual vocals, where the cries of one singer, I'm washing you down the sink, my bottle is empty, I'm keeping my hands clean, mingles with this previous vocal refrain by the other vocalist, all the pain you caused, all the friends you lost, all the times you said you're right, you're really wrong. And it's just the way you've got those two singers singing those different lines, really effective. So I think it's a great song.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I came across them by accident, to be honest. And as much as I love this song, and I suppose this version of the song, on their socials they do like kind of videos where it's just them and the guitar, you know, no the banjo, no the drums or anything like that, and they just kind of harmonise beautifully. And in some respects I enjoy them both equally, but I really love when it's just them, just those two kind of harmonising. I think it's brilliant. To be honest, Snedds, I never thought about it at the time. Obviously, I kind of gave you the song because I thought you would like it, but then almost as soon as I gave it to you, I was like, fuck, I actually don't know whether you'll appreciate that or not because of its kind of lyrical content and stuff like that. So, yeah, I'm not going to go into it, obviously, but I'm glad you enjoyed it, man. I did kind of get the impression that it's almost like, I think it's Harlow's lyrics in the chorus, like there's a kind of real kind of desperation, or exasperation's maybe the kind of better way of kind of describing it, and I think it's quite touching, and I think it just works really well.
I think exasperation's definitely the word.
Exasperation's the better.
Yeah, but yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I thought it was a good song. It's powerful, it's fun to listen to, and it's pretty deep when you dig into the lyrics as well, which on first listen, you know, I didn't really appreciate. So it wasn't until a few listens that I started to actually notice that.
I think at the time that we were recording, Main had just came out, because they released the Sync and Main, and as you said, Main was then released as a kind of 4-track EP just in kind of June time, wasn't it? And I think the inclination was to give you Main because it was the newer single, but I absolutely fell in love with the Sync. I was like, I've been listening to this non-stop, like, so he's getting this, but Main's a brilliant song as well.
Yeah, I mean,
I've yet to listen to the other 2 tracks in the EP, but I've listened to their first album, the debut album, and really enjoyed that as well. And I think they've got a really good relationship. Like, it feels genuine, it feels fun, and I think that's kind of part of their appeal, and I think that's why they probably work so well. And there is a bit in the song where they're kind of shouting at each other, "You are a liar," or whatever it is.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I give this an 8 out of 10. I think it's really good. And like you say, I have listened to the EP just because I was listening to this song and then it's kind of rolled into
just automatically listened. Yeah.
Yeah, so I couldn't tell you which song's which, but I have listened to it and I really enjoyed the other 3 tracks. So I think if you do like The Sync, then yeah, make sure you listen to the rest of those songs.
I'm going to give it a 9.
Well, you're going to give it a 9.
That's how strongly I feel.
Yeah,
8 or 9.
I can't really argue with that, to be fair. I feel like there was something I was going to say, but I've forgotten what it is now, so I'm sure it doesn't matter.
Fuck it. Fuck it. It's lost.
Anyway, so into that was... Yeah, Into the Ether. So that was The Sync by Hey Nothing. Actually, I'll tell you what I was going to say. It was when you were talking about sort of how close they are and stuff like that. I was like, well, they've literally named their album We're Starting to Look Like Each Other. Like, that's how much time they spend together and how close they are. So that was what I was going to say.
No, makes sense.
Yeah, so there you are. So yeah, that was The Sync by Hey Nothing.
I heard you're headed to the plains. You packed a bag, changed your name. Fuck that, go back. Look me in the eyes and say I'm wrong. Don't bother putting me in one of your 12 steps. I don't need a letter to know the truth. And all the pain you caused, all the friends you lost, all the times you said.
Okay, what have you got for
Digital corkboard.
next time?
Oh yeah,
No,
for next time.
Yeah.
Get a Grip by a band called Catch. Strictly speaking, not a single, but it's off their debut EP, The Frequency of Thought, which was released on the 27th of July. So last month. They're an indie rock band from York. That I think you'll like.
So that was that Get a Grip by Catch.
Catch with an exclamation mark.
Catch.
That's how I expect you to say it.
I'm all about the pronunciation of punctuation on this episode. Right. Okay. So Get a Grip by Catch. Sorry, Catch. I have got for you a song called Soul Ronnie by
what?
Soul Ronnie. So you've got Soul. And
you got
Ronnie.
Soul Ronnie?
No, it's just Soul Ronnie. I was just trying to say that's
right.
SOUL. Soul Ronnie.
Yeah.
By Herald, and this is the lead single from a 25-year delayed album called Linear B by Herald, also known as Lawrence Worthington, and we were actually sent the album and single way back by a DIY record label based in Glasgow called Errol's Hot Wax, and I just wanted to find somewhere to cover
25
the
years?
single. Apparently so. I don't really know the kind of background to it.
It's a lifetime.
But yeah, it is a lifetime. So the description is neo-psychedelic alt-pop, and Soul Ronnie is the opening track and presumably the lead single from the album. I don't know if there's any other singles released from the album, but that is what I want you to listen to. Soul Ronnie. The album's out as well, so it's probably worth having a
swatch at that.
a wee listen to the album as well, just for context.
Oh yeah, I see it here. Yeah, Soul Ronnie. I love that.
Good stuff. Right, so that is Get a Grip by Catch and Soul Ronnie by Herald.
You'll share man's greatest thrill.
They tried and failed.
You're dealing with the creme de la creme.
Okay, we've done the gig reviews. Let's skip past that. And the digital Cork Road. The digital corkboard. Jesus. So we're back with the digital corkboard, a place to throw in random news and updates, anything that doesn't really fit anywhere else on the podcast. So there have been a few new releases from some bands and artists that we covered previously that I just wanted to mention briefly. There's a new album out from Mothman and the Thunderbirds, if you remember them. It's called Portal Hopper, and it's a heady mix of power pop and monstrous riffs. So if you liked their debut album Into the Hollow, go and check out Portal Hopper. It's a little bit different from that, but there are lots of similarities. Jason Roberts from Breaths has been busy as ever and has released yet another Breaths album and another Roseneath EP. I think there was also a Roseneath album out last year as well. So he's been releasing tons and tons of stuff over the last couple of years. So if you liked Breaths' Lined in Silver album that we covered way back, or indeed the Roseneath EP, Shine, I think it's Shine, not Shrine, we've covered on the podcast, then make sure you go back and check in with what Jason's been doing since, because he's just prolific as hell. And then the final thing I would like to mention is that there's a new single out from Becca Starr. It's called Why I'm Still Smoking, and features Slippery Trashmouth, also known as Ewan Goon. I'm not sure what Ewan's actual surname is, but we'll go with that just now. And we covered Becca Starr's album Speak No Evil back on episode 22.
2022, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right. And I think it's safe to say we both absolutely loved it. And a lot of other people loved it as well, because it earned Becca an award for the best hip-hop album at the 2022 Scottish Alternative Music Awards. So if you still haven't listened to it, drop what you're doing and sort your life out and just go and listen to it now. We also covered Slippery Trashmouth's Postulated Substance Abuse EP on episode 15, and both really enjoyed that as well. I think it might have actually been the first piece of Scottish hip hop that we covered. We've done a few since then, but I think that EP was the first one. So anyway, sort of a collaboration between two artists we've covered previously and enjoyed a lot from. So Why I'm Still Smoking is the first single from an upcoming album from Becca Starr called Defixio, which is due for release later this year. There's going to be a couple more singles following this, Get Hype and Follow the Leader, ahead of the album dropping. So, and it's actually the first of two companion albums. There'll be another album called Seraph, which is still currently a work in progress. And Becca has sent him some info on the album, but I don't want to go into too much detail on that just now, because we're trying to organise a chat with Becca and Ewan, so we can hopefully dive more into the album's themes with them. But the sort of idea of a Defixio being a cursed tablet is quite an intriguing one.
Yeah, it's quite cool.
A very dark subject matter. And the song itself is quite dark. What did you think of the song, Grant?
I really enjoyed it. It kind of opens with like this kind of rumbling kind of electronic drum beat. Becca's vocals kick in around the kind of 13-second mark, so they kind of start pretty early on to the song, and what I've written down here is like immediately light up the room, and I think that's something that we kind of picked up on when we were discussing our album. I've kind of described here, vocals are lush and effervescent, like they're just brilliant. The song takes on a kind of hip hop R&B type of vibe, but as you said, there is that kind of darker element to it as well. There's a bit of a kind of tonal change round about the chorus with kind of weird, almost like kind of brooding strings, I think.
Yeah. And
spoken word lyrics, and I couldn't quite make out what she was saying.
There were some that I couldn't quite make out either, but one of the lines I think is, I I've got it here somewhere. It's, they all think I'm aware and I'm broken. If they knew the truth, they'd understand why I'm still smoking. And that's one of the lines.
And there's talk of like, you know, thoughts being trapped in her head. And
yeah.
kind of insinuation that she's kind of struggling with it, which is an interesting juxtaposition because like the verse sounds so confident and, as I said, so lush and effervescent. It's interesting. I quite enjoyed that.
But even with that vocal performance in the verse, it feels quite bright and upbeat. But
yeah,
there are even lyrics in there, like I've got a couple of snippets. There's references to jumping off a ledge and nightmare realities creeping in. So even with that sort of sunnier vocal performance, there's still a darker element to it. Yeah, the sort of spoken word section, and you mentioned the strings, like it's quite sinister. I think the sort of first two verses are Becca, and then Slippery Trash Mouth comes in for a third verse of fairly laid back rap. And I haven't kept up with everything that he's done since the EP we covered, but I have kind of a dip in and out, and it's one of my favourite performances I've heard from him, I would say. And I like the first line, "My eyes are open but I can't quite see." Pulls me in every time. I do love that divisive Scottish rap thing where people rapping in a Scottish accent. I can't get enough of it. Aye.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a strong performance. I really enjoyed it as well. And again, it's quite good to have, you know, the difference between the two.
Yeah, and it's nothing. I mean, if you've listened to Speak No Evil, then it's, you know, there's guest spots from other Scottish rappers on there as well. So it's not. So it kind of. I think if you enjoyed that album, you'll get a lot out of this as well. There was something quite nice about just hearing Becca's vocals again on something new. So yeah, definitely worth checking out if you enjoyed either Speak No Evil or Postulated Substance Abuse. It's a nice teaser for the album, and based on this and sort of the name of it, yeah, I'm quite curious to find out what that's all about, and indeed what this kind of follow-up album will be as well. So I'm looking forward to talking to Becca and Ewan, hopefully sometime soon.
That'd be cool, man.
Yeah.
Jump off the ledge, finally I'm falling. Wish I could fly since a kid. I'll always be suspicious, believe it, no duty here to witness. When all of my potential was in full effect.
My eyes are open but I can't quite see. Lately I've been trying to cope and I just hope I might be.
I know you think I've got the answers, but I'm spent. They all think I'm aware and I'm broken.
Right, let's get on to the album reviews then. So if you're listening and have something you'd like us to hear, you can send it to us at theheadscratcher@outlook.com or direct message us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. So the first one we've got here is the Divine Accusations LP by Black Opal. It was released on the 15th of April this year, self-released. It's 12 tracks and roughly 40 minutes long, and Black Opal are a rock band based in Belfast and are made up of Shane Diamond on guitar, Phil McCabe on bass, Dee McCann on vocals and guitar, and Sean Logie on drums. Is it Logie? Have I written that down wrong? Sean Logie Logue, I think it's supposed to be, on drums. And they remind me a little bit of other rock and punk bands that we've covered, like the Fades or Waco, where their influences range from the classic to the contemporary. You were sent this.
I was sent this because I shared a flat with Phil McCabe, so the bassist, in Sydney Terrace Houses in Sydney, Australia, for, I mean, I wasn't there for very long, but obviously, you know, I had Phil on Facebook, and I knew that, like, I remember him being into music. I can't remember if he had his bass with him, but he might have had a guitar, and, you know, spent a bit of time with him talking about music and stuff, but I honestly haven't heard from Phil in years. I mean, I was out in Australia in 2011, and I don't think I've really kind of heard from him since, to be honest. So yeah, it was a bit of a kind of bolt out of the blue, which we'll come to later on.
Yeah.
But yeah, he asked, he was like, I remember you being quite into your music at the time. I can't remember if he kind of knew about the podcast or not. I don't know. But yeah, I thought
He
should,
sent
I encouraged him to, because he said that there was kind of some kind of release material or promo material, and I was like, rather than sending it through Facebook Messenger, the best thing to do is kind of send it to Snedds and send it to the Head Scratcher mailbox.
Yeah, I think there was like some release material which I don't think I actually sent over to you, so that's not really much use to you, but I think that's just where I got the information on the band members and stuff. But yeah, that's quite cool after sort of a decade or more.
Over a decade, yeah, it's 13 years or something. Aye, but it's I think I never actually thought about it, but I think you've kind of hit the nail pretty squarely on the head there. You know, I was trying to think of, you know, what band it kind of reminds me of, and I think Waco is quite a good comparison, to be fair.
Yeah, I don't think
it's not a like for like, but I think
exactly.
There's definite similarities. You know, when I was kind of reading up about them, obviously I never had kind of access to that stuff, but you know, I'd kind of heard that, you know, according to their bio on their website, it kind of talks about how each band member came with their own diverse musical backgrounds and energies, you know? And I think you can see that throughout the course of the album, but I would have to say that I think they've got one foot firmly in that kind of classic rock camp. I don't know if you would agree with that. And I don't just mean in terms of the kind of musical composition of the songs, but I kind of felt that the lyrical content itself felt as if it kind of drew pretty heavily on those classic rock bands from maybe the 70s, 80s. Like I kind of got like a feel from like almost like AC/DC, kind of Motley Crue type of vibe to it. I don't know if you'd be in agreement.
I think there's elements of that in it. Yeah, I mean, I've referenced a few different things. Like on the first track, I was
Beautiful Confusion.
Yeah, Beautiful Conclusion. Is it conclusion or confusion? Have I confused that?
I think it's confusion. I can double check. Confusion.
Okay, so I have created a confusion. So it's Beautiful Confusion. So yeah, I kind of said the opening riff of that song sounds a bit like a cross between Foo Fighters and Alice in Chains. So it's like there's a bit of a like radio rock, sort of hard rock kind of element to it, which is maybe not sort of 70s but maybe into the 80s and 90s kind of vibe, and it's just kind of really catchy rock but with a little bit of grit to it.
I've referenced Foo Fighters as well, actually, in the kind of latter part of the album.
Yeah, and I kind of said that song particularly, I tend to prefer sort of gruffer vocals or sort of with a bit more bite to them, but I really quite like the Queen vocals here, and I kind of just got hooked in by them. They're quite melodic and quite poppy, but not overly polished, and there's some great repetition of lines like all I feel is love and is it real or are you real throughout this song. It's got a real swagger to it as well, so it's a good way to open the album up.
Yeah, it's funny you kind of mention that kind of swagger and kind of confidence to the kind of musical composition, because I felt the same about the second track, Giving In. I felt that there was a kind of real kind of confidence and kind of swagger to that song. I kind of felt as if there was a touch of kind of desert rock as well. I quite enjoyed the kind of tonal change that kind of prefaces the kind of pre-chorus section. I thought that was quite nice, quite an interesting wee touch and quite infectious. Same with I Can't Stand It. I felt I kind of referenced Caius on that track. I felt as if there was a continuation of that kind of desert rock vibes in that song. I really enjoyed Hit the Lights as well. I felt as if, you know, that Hit the Lights, so the kind of fourth track on the album, you know, was a bit more raucous and frenetic. It doesn't kind of use that kind of basic verse chorus verse kind of format, which you know, is good, you know what I mean, because it keeps things interesting. And I think this song in particular kind of showcases the band's flair for using kind of breakdowns and kind of tonal changes to kind of mix up the songs in order to stop it from feeling stale and kind of keeping it fresh and interesting.
Yeah, I mean, all those songs you've mentioned, I think this is a really consistent album. I think it's consistently good. Those first 4 opening songs we've talked about are all really good, and you know, there's a mixture of like cool guitar solos and punk attitude and lots of grooves, and just generally really satisfying bass tone, really engaging drums as well. And you've got track 5, Electrify, which it's got a really heavy metal opening guitar lick, which then sort of goes more into kind of hard rock territories in the rest of the song, but the low end on that song is so good. It just hits really hard, and there's a weird sort of almost robotic sounding vocal line, Heart and Soul, Electrify, that I found really quite impactful. The next track I mentioned, Gotta Find a Way, it's sort of almost like bluesy sort of southern rock, and
I got classic rock vibe.
Yeah,
from it.
I was thinking kind of ZZ Top, and the reason I was thinking that is like, you know, it's got that confidence and swagger. It's like that moment in Terminator 2 where Arnie puts his sunglasses on for the first time, like after fucking up everyone in that bar. It's got that kind of level of cool to it. But the next track reminded me a little bit of the Casper Baum record we talked about last time. It's got that kind of post-punk REM kind of vibe. I really like that song. There's
a wee kind of brief musical interlude with Song for a Sunbeam, which is the kind of next track on the album. Quite enjoyed that. It's just like a kind of spacious, kind of proggy number. Kind of reminded me of a bit of Pink Floyd's Saint-Tropez off their Medal album, just albeit a wee bit shorter. I think Saint-Tropez is probably like 5 minutes long or something, whereas this is maybe just over a minute possibly. But it's nice. It's, as I said, it's a kind of purely instrumental number, but I think it's a nice wee interlude which kind of segues quite nicely into Catching the Butterfly, which is the kind of next track after that, which I don't know, it kind of gave me kind of Smashing Pumpkins kind of Swan vibes to it.
I was getting Oasis vibes from that song.
Okay.
Like sort of these sort of kind of swaggering Britpop kind of riffs. That's where I was going with Catching the Butterfly, and it's one of my favourite tracks. Not that I'm a huge Oasis fan or anything, but that's where I went with it. Yeah, it's definitely one of my favourite songs.
What did you make of Abandon?
It's quite folky in the verse.
I've kind of described it. I found like the lyrics quite catchy, quite infectious. But what I've written here is like there's a kind of small moment. I think it's probably microseconds where the lyrics take on an unusual kind of almost like medieval kind of trad lilt to it, which I found quite interesting. So I don't know if that's maybe where the kind of folky elements kind of coming in. But I enjoyed that. Like,
yeah, I mean, I said that the melody reminded me a bit of Massive Attack's Teardrop, which it doesn't sound like the song sounds nothing like Teardrop, but I think there's just a melody in there in that sort of folky section that sort of is similar to Teardrop. So I enjoyed that, and it's got these kind of weird like almost stadium rock riffs in it as well. So, and then there's kind of a bit of heavy metal in there as well, just in some of the guitar squeals. So it's quite a weird song, but a good one. And then they've just got a couple of tracks left. You've got Feel Free and History. Feel Free was the most sort of AC/DC kind of.
Well, I got Motley Crue again. That's just that kind of straight up like balls to the wall 70s 80s like classic rock. Which I enjoyed. History, I thought was, so that's the kind of final track on the album. I thought it was quite a nice wee outro track. Reminded me of the likes of, again, I'm kind of coming in with the kind of Smashing Pumpkins references here, but it reminded me a bit like Farewell and Goodnight off the Melancholy and Infinite Sadness album, in as much as I think it kind of felt like a lullaby to a certain extent. And I was also weirdly reminded of the Proclaimers as well, and I think it was just purely about, like, not in a bad way, like I'm not going to have any fucking hate levelled against the Proclaimers because they've got their, you know, they've got their uses. But
They've got some fantastic songs.
They do have some fantastic, they do have some fantastic tracks. But yeah, I think it was just something to do purely with, I think, like maybe the accent or the kind of the inflections on certain words. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I think there's the occasional sort of Irish lilt here and there that creeps in on some of the vocals. I'm just presuming that the singer is in fact Irish, but given that they're based in Belfast. But I did notice that sort of lilt creeping in on some of the tracks, which is nice to hear.
Yeah, and I think you know, as well as on this track, I think as well as the kind of inflections on certain words and what have you. Yeah. Possibly to do with the accents. I do think that there is, like, the melody, obviously, like, the melody accompanies the kind of lyrics, and yeah, I think that's where I was kind of reminded of the Proclaimers as well. Couldn't attribute it to any one song, to be honest. Couldn't quite put my finger on it, but I enjoyed those wee moments.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a nice track to end the album. It's a little bit of a kind of cool down after all the sort of rollicking rock and roll on the rest of the album, and then it does sort of build to this reasonably bombastic crescendo as well. So it's not all it's not just a sort of soft melodic song. But yeah, a really good way to close out the album. What have you given this?
I've given it an 8 or 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I've given it an 8 out of 10 as well. I just think it's an album of really good songs. It's just
don't have to say don't have to say much more than that, Snedds. That's it.
Yeah, it's an album of really good songs, peppered with some really great songs.
Aye.
And yeah, if you're a fan of rock in any of its forms, then you probably get a kick out of it.
Yeah, it's their debut album as well, which I think is kind of worth mentioning.
Yeah,
I thought it was, you know, brilliantly ambitious, very well produced, and very well curated. You know what I mean? Like sometimes, and I think that, you know, it's maybe the case with some of the other albums that we're going to be covering this time round. But sometimes I've found in the past that, like, some albums are kind of top heavy, in as much as, like, maybe the first 5 or 6 tracks are kind of really good, and, you know, maybe kind of loses its energy halfway through. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head there by saying that, you know, this is a consistently good album throughout.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so that was Divine Accusations by Black Opal.
It's a long way back from here. If you can't stay, then you can leave your mark on me. I can't stand it. Take my lonely heart and break it. Heart and soul electrified. Free, you're free to feel free, feel free to feel free.
Right, what's the next album then? Okay, the next album is the Can't Hate You Forever LP by Safeword, and it was released on the 17th of May this year, a self-released album, and it is 9 tracks long, which equates to roughly 29 minutes, so it's reasonably swift.
Sure.
Yeah. And technically we weren't actually sent this album. Karen Foster from Safeword got in touch because we really liked a song by her other band. That song was Dominoes, and that other band is Shoulder Season.
I thought that is Fucking great song. I thought there was a connection somehow.
See, again, I didn't forward you the promo stuff, so
we're here now. It's fine.
yeah. But yes, so that is like you just fawned all over that song. Yes, a wonderful song. So we were sent. What song were we sent? We were actually sent Mr. Meager, I think, which is the second track on the album. Yes, so we were sent Mr. Meager, and because we don't really cover singles other than on the single swap, I thought, well, they mentioned the album in the email. It's out now, so we might as well just talk about the album instead. And after listening through the album several times, I'm really glad that we're covering it because it's good. It's pretty good.
It's very good. It's
Yeah.
very good.
Karen contributes vocals and keys to the band. She's joined by Brian Foster on drums, Greg Baller on bass, and Dan Watt on guitar. And according to her email, Safeword have been described as pretenders meet Superchunk in an alley, and their Spotify bio describes influences from the 70s, the 90s and the noughties, so that should give people some idea of what to expect. What's your initial thoughts on Can't Be You Forever?
I loved it. I really enjoyed the first track. It wasn't a case of, an album kind of growing on you. I loved it from first listen. So the first song is called Lazarus. Kind of opens with kind of a lo-fi aesthetic, complete with what I've kind of described as almost like Thurman-esque keys or synth, a kind of grunting bass line and kind of echoey female vocals. I've said that the kind of first offering of the song's chorus at the kind of 55-second mark just slaps real hard, and for me was just an earworm that I couldn't help but kind of sing along to time and time again. Foster's vocals kind of shift gear and are accompanied with kind of crashing cymbals and a bit more biting attitude from Watt's guitar, culminating in a kind of real high point. I thought that was a kind of brilliant opening track, and I think kind of provides you with a kind of taste of what's more to come from the album. That then, as you said, gets us into the second song of the album, which was the single that was sent us. And I absolutely love this track as well. It feels a little less kind of spacious than the kind of opening track, and feels a bit more direct. The vocal refrain of the chorus of "I don't know what to do with this anger." This anger again is a kind of real bop. This is kind of shortly followed by almost like twee sounding keyboard trills and flourishes, which again I really enjoyed. There's a kind of lovely bit of kind of that quiet loud dynamic, which is played out before the last chorus of the song, which I just thought was expertly executed, and I just loved it. I've got a lot of love for all the songs on this album, to be honest.
Absolutely. But the last time they sing the refrain of "I don't know what to do with this anger," it's got that kind of shriek, like feminine shriek on it. It just feels like this huge burst of emotion. I really like that. And you mentioned this sort of trilling keys or synths. Those kind of really breezy synths are all over this album. I mean, the first few seconds of Lazarus, for example, that just draws you straight in, and I was kind of hooked from that moment on. And I got from that song and elsewhere on the album a little bit of a Magic Numbers vibe here and there, maybe mixed with a little bit of MGMT as well here and there.
I definitely get Magic Numbers. Yeah, definitely get Magic Numbers.
But there's a lot of there are no bad songs on here. I mean, the third track has got a bit more of a brooding synth line, and it sort of gives way to this sort of swaying alternative rock. It's a little bit romantic, a little bit dramatic, really superb melodies throughout, and I get a bit of a weird Arcade Fire vibe in there as well. I'm not certain of that, but that's what kind of popped into my head.
Yeah. I really enjoyed Jane, so the third track on the album. So again, that was another single that was released from the album as well, and I can totally see why. Totally get it. Yeah, as I said, there's, you know, again, this is another consistently good album. There's lots of little interesting wee bits and things that, you know, you could kind of pick out. Really like the 6th song, So I Was a Dog. Again, in keeping with, I suppose, their self-description, it has that kind of 80s vibe on this number. It's kind of punchy, punky, and kind of works really well. Some gang vocals chucked in the chorus, which I really enjoyed. And again, it kind of harks back to what you were saying about the shriek on... Was it the 2nd song that you kind of mentioned?
Yeah.
So, again, I don't know if it's intentional or not, but I'm pretty sure in the last vocal refrain of the lyric, I was a dog with a bone, she does this kind of wee howl, which is, you know, if that was intentional, that's pretty genius, to be honest.
I got a little hint of the melody from Wave of Mutilation in there somewhere.
Okay, yeah.
There's a little bit of a weird Pixies vibe on some of the guitars. That's a great track. I want to just jump back to track 4 for a minute, because Mimi is definitely one of the best tracks in the album for me. Yeah, which is saying something given the quality of the rest of the songs here. It's just got a nice sort of muted chug to the guitars, a kind of swirling, echoing squall on the guitars as well. Really catchy vocal melodies. It's slow, it's sad, it's introspective, it's cathartic. The lyrics that go, maybe this is a country song about me and my women just trucking along, and maybe I'm just a country guy who loves life and living, doesn't have to ask why. The delivery of that is so good.
Yeah, I kind of picked out the lyrics as well, so I've written quite a bit of the lyrics down here, so I get the point. It's been 39 years, maybe I just don't want to die, maybe I didn't change anything this time, I'll come back for another try, then maybe I'll fix the hole in the sky. I like that, and I kind of felt as if that was maybe part of a theme within the album that's maybe kind of, it's fleshed out at kind of various points throughout the album, and maybe we could kind of come back to later on, but I feel as if there is a link between these and then maybe the kind of final track, Ladder, but I don't want to jump to that quite yet, because there's still a wee bit to say with regards to that. But you mentioned your kind of favourite song in the album, so one of my favourite songs has to be Young Bud, so the seventh song in the album. It kind of opens with this kind of dark, brooding keys, synth and drums, which kind of build in momentum to an almost marching band like aesthetic.
Yeah.
And I just love the lyrical content as well. It's it just kind of feels as if it's kind of a verbal attack on somebody that's wronged them, and yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it's another class song. It's got that kind of 80s synth on it as well. Might as well talk about the next song, which is See Through Time, and that's got a bit of a kind of Joy Division post-punky kind of bass line to it. And I'm thinking of Love Will Tear Us Apart as an example. It's got that. I mean, that's probably the only Joy Division song I actually know the name of, but it has that vibe, is what I'm trying to say. But it's also got these kind of grungy stabs of guitar and these like attacking drum blasts as well, which just give it a little something extra.
Yeah, absolutely. It definitely felt a wee bit more kind of raucous and chaotic than some of the kind of previous tracks. And then, as you said, it kind of finishes with the kind of 9th song, Ladder, which is a more sombre refrain number. Karen Foster's vocals and kind of a spectral kind of piano. I said that it kind of initially felt a wee bit out of place, you know, when I was kind of first writing the kind of notes for the song, but then again on reflection, when I kind of reflected back on, as I said, the kind of themes from some of the earlier parts of the album, it probably makes more sense. It kind of ends on a kind of quite a positive message, I suppose, with the lyrics that I know it's bad, but it gets better, and I think that's kind of, and maybe I think one of the lyrics is it, but you've been worse or something along those lines, and I thought that was quite a nice message to kind of end on, and I suppose it makes sense, you know, if you think of like how the album's created in terms of, you know, the kind of rest of the lyrical content.
Yeah, it's a really great song to end the album on. Just that it's just a thing of beauty, really, and it is sad, but it's also kind of uplifting at the same time. Like you said, it's got those lines like, well, it's got lines like every heart breaks, every smile fades, every ladder is a snake. But then it's got that, I know you're sad, but you've been sadder. I know it's bad, but it gets better. Yeah. So there is that sort of uplifting message to it, and I never felt like it was out of place. It just seemed to fit quite well, even though the other songs are different. They are. It's the most stripped back of them all, but it felt like a fitting conclusion.
What have you given it, Snedds?
Well, well, so I genuinely can't fault this album because it's got elements of rock and roll and punk and sort of new wave and alt rock and radio rock and indie, and there's all sorts of stuff in there without sounding like a terrible sort of mashup of things. Safeword seem to be just sort of adept at writing these. They can write these faster, peppier songs, and they can write these slower, moodier songs, and every song is memorable. So it's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, well, I give it a 9 out of 10, but I think 10 out of 10. Yeah. I suppose I kind of feel as if I've kind of glossed over.
Yeah,
the album.
I kind of feel
and
like
the songs
as well, but
it's an absolutely brilliant album.
Like our mere words can't do justice to what the album sounds like. You just have to go and listen to it. It's just a really fun, catchy album, but there's a lot of depth to it as well. And I think the more
it's going in the Hall of Fame.
Well, yeah, that was it. The more I listened to it, the more I was just like, I literally cannot fault this. It's just brilliant. So there it goes. It's going in.
Bam.
Good. Excellent. So that was the Can't Hate You Forever LP from Safeword.
Every heart breaks, every smile fades, every ladder is a snake. Every way out that they sell you leads you right back to this room.
Do you want me to do the next one?
Is that Crumbs?
That is Crumbs.
Yep,
that's Crumbs. So, next album, we've got You're Just Jealous by Crumbs, which was released on the 17th of May this year on Skip Wax Records. It's just under 30 minutes long and contains 12 songs. It's the band's sophomore album. The band themselves are a kind of mix between post-punk and indie pop. Their first album was released in 2017 and it was called Mind Your Manners, spelled YR Manners. The band themselves are based in Leeds and York and consists of Ruth on vocals, Stuart on guitar, Jamie on bass and Jem on drums. Yeah, I really enjoyed this album as well.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's got a lot to offer. I think it kind of draws on, a number of different kind of musical influences. I think they've got a real flair for changing things up within the tracks to kind of stop it from feeling stale. I think they keep things fresh, and I think there's elements that are kind of this album that seems kind of strangely nostalgic in some ways as well. I think there's a kind of real confidence and kind of swagger to them as well, particularly in the kind of vocal performances. But the bass was a huge kind of standout element for me as well. What was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean the bass is really sort of up front in the mix, isn't it? It's like
absolutely
very audible, so that's always good. I felt like this was quite a good companion piece to the Safeword album, because it's got that kind of same punk spirit and knack for a melody, albeit this leans far more into the punk side of things.
Yeah, but I would agree. Almost like proto-punk, like the original punks, if that makes sense. Like I mean, the first track reminded me of the Kidney Flowers that we
That's exactly what I've put
a wee while ago.
Yeah.
There's kind of elements of, like, I suppose when we're talking about the kind of proto-punk bands, so the likes of X-Ray Specs from way back when, 70s. But there was elements of kind of dry cleaning in there as well. I think with regards to the kind of vocal delivery, I think that's where I kind of noticed the similarities.
Okay, yeah. I sort of said there's, on that first track at least, there's a bit of the Dandy Warhols in there as well, just because there's a sort of radio friendly kind of nature to elements of it. I think that's where I was going with that. So yeah, another really great opening track.
Absolutely. As you mentioned there, the bass is just immediately audible. It's up front there in the mix, and as I said, just kind of opens with this kind of bold, swaggering bass line, and that's kind of peppered throughout the album, and that's kind of continued into the kind of second song, Stab Alley. They've got kind of discordant, wielding kind of guitar riff in there, staccato vocals. There's a really enjoyable kind of call and answer dynamic in the kind of pre-chorus section, which I really enjoyed. Again, thinking back to that, or kind of calling back to that kind of proto-punk 70s punk kind of vibe. I kind of got elements of kind of John Lydon on some of the kind of vocal delivery. I think it's particularly just that lyric, "Can't read your mind." I think it's something to do with the kind of inflection that kind of Ruth puts on her vocals in that track that reminded me of good old Johnny Rotten.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely a proper driving punk song. That I really like. There's these sort of harmonics, guitar harmonics, but they're like overdriven with lots of fuzz on them, and they just sound, I love that. Like a bit of harmonics, but when they're overdriven, it just sounds cooler somehow. But it's the track 3, Dear Deirdre, is potentially my favourite song on the album. It certainly has the melody that has been stuck in my head the most. Yeah. And potentially the best song on this entire episode from my perspective, at least.
Okay.
Or the one, I'm gonna go out on a limb.
Yeah, go for it, man. I mean, it's a great track. I think out of, I kind of mentioned elements of this album being strangely nostalgic, and I think with this song in particular, it feels like it's got like a proper 80s vibe to it. That vocal refrain of "Try help, dear, dear, Deirdre" was hugely infectious. Weirdly, it reminded me of the band The Waitresses. Do you know the guys that sang Christmas Rapping?
Oh yeah.
You totally will.
Yeah, I know Christmas Rapping. I wouldn't have known it was The Waitresses, but I know the song Christmas Rapping. Yeah.
I don't know why it reminded me of them. So yeah, I really liked it. It's a proper bop.
It's just it's just completely irresistible. I think you put the band in front of any audience playing that song, and they'll have the audience eating out of their hands. I just love it. Yeah, that whole chorus section, "Heaven help me, there's a problem, right back, I think you can solve it." That's been running through my head for days and weeks. Yeah, absolutely brilliant track. I mean, you've mentioned sort of proto-punk. Well, yeah, you mentioned X-Ray Specs. I've kind of on the fifth track, Rest in Pieces, probably applies to some of the other tracks as well. I've referenced the Go-Go's, kind of one of the sort of earliest kind of all-female, I don't know if you would, this was their punk rock, I suppose. And quite, again, sort of radio-friendly guitar riffs. There's a nice, prominent, bubbly bass line, and there's a good kind of refrain of "I'll take the aisle," which has got this female-male vocal call and answer element to it. And there's a part where the vocals cross over, not dissimilar to the Sink, the Hey Nothing song we talked about earlier, just the way the two different sets of vocal lines cross over with two different singers. And there's a nice shout of the song title, Rest in Peace Is, which is really good as well. Yeah, I like that song a lot.
Yeah. The sixth song, Let's Not, it felt as if there was like a change, like, and I don't know, like, I haven't kind of taken a deep enough dive in to kind of find out whether it is a different singer on this track or not, but it felt different. Like, the vocals seem a lot harsher on this track, and again, in keeping with that kind of punk vibe, it reminded me of like Amyl and the Sniffers. Remember the Australian band that we covered previously? And I think, you know, the vocals and instrumentation really work well together. Instrumentation really kind of jabs and prods and really kind of punctuates the lyrics on this song, and you know, it feels as if it kind of demands your attention, maybe more so than the other songs, or maybe just in a kind of different way.
It's definitely, the vocals are definitely a bit more antagonistic.
Yeah.
And I get that Amyl and the Sniffers kind of vibe as well. Yeah, I've just said it's a bit of a belter.
But there was a couple of tracks there, again, thinking of early punks. So the seventh song, 4291, it kind of reminded me of Ian Mackay's band, Corky. Remember that album that we covered a wee while ago?
Yeah, that's a really good album.
It's fantastic. But yeah, I kind of got that from that song. The eighth song, Call Now, you kind of mentioned the kind of guitar harmonics being used in the kind of earlier part of the album.
Yeah.
They're used here again, kind of resembling, you know, a kind of telephone or kind of ringtone. I felt, I don't know, again, the general vibe of the song, I kind of got elements of, I'm never too sure how to pronounce it, clit drip,
yeah.
Clit drip, and I thought there was this kind of interesting juxtaposition between an almost kind of brooding verse and this kind of bright sounding chorus, but you know, the lyrical content's anything but, though, you know, it kind of talks about this is not a person, it's a cycle, which I really enjoyed. I got Corky vibes on track 10 as well, Sad Snoopy.
I just really like the name, the song title, Sad Snoopy.
Sad Snoopy.
I just find it amusing.
You've got Mambo number 6 as well.
Yeah, which is not
nothing like number 5.
I was about to say it's not a sequel to the Louis Vega classic, but it's just another really good punk rock song. There's a sort of sliding guitar lick that's particularly earwormy, and there's some sort of interesting wooden percussion in there that gives it a little bit of an eccentric kind of feel. Just that's a little bit of a sort of Corky kind of vibe there, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think there's, maybe applies to other parts of the album as well. There's some similarities with the Bundy Bunch EP that we covered.
Yeah, I'd forgotten about them.
Yeah. And closing track, Too Many Creeps, another good song title. Pretty groovy guitar stabs, grumbly bass line, nice scuzzy guitar solo in there. I've said it's the bass that steals the show, and like, yeah,
every time.
Yeah, the bass is so good on this album. What have you given it then?
I give it an 8 or 9 out of 10.
Yeah, I've said an easy 8 out of 10. Yeah, it's just a solid collection of catchy indie punk rock songs. Great lyrics, great melodies, and just enough of that rough around the edges DIY garage kind of element to keep things interesting. And like I said before, it's a nice companion piece for the Safeword album.
Yeah.
And if you only listen to one song, make it Dear Deirdre.
Dear Deirdre.
Because it's phenomenal. I should mention that the album came out on Skepwax Records, and it was Rob and Amelia from Skepwax who sent us the album. So they're an independent record label based in Kent, so just thanks to them for sending this to us. So yeah, so that was You're Just Jealous by Crumbs.
Totally undetectable. naturally. I know what you expect to see. Don't waste my time. Please help, dear, dear, dear. Heaven help me, there's a problem. Right back, you think you can solve it. Last time I checked, I didn't choose this. Rest, so why are you the one who's walking home? Just sound right to me, step up to time to see. Tried so hard, like to be a good one. You didn't notice. Heads up. Don't wanna. Waiting for to call. You complaining, waiting for to call. And it comes to us all. What we can control.
Okay, the penultimate album is A Bolt from the Blue by Modern
As
Shakes.
referenced earlier on.
As accidentally referenced earlier on. It is... Yeah, so A Bolt from the Blue by Modern Shakes. It was released on the 24th of May this year on Disconnect Records. 10 tracks long, roughly 37 minutes. And I don't really remember how I came across this. I think someone from Waco or maybe even Regal Cheer retweeted this or something.
Right, okay.
And I
That
think-
kind of makes sense, to be fair.
Yeah, and I think I commented...
Certainly Regal Cheer.
Yeah, and I think I commented on it, and then I can't remember if the band were... I can't remember, is what I'm saying. But they did send... The band did send us this via Instagram. So it's an album that reminds me heavily of a lot of the music that I was listening to in my teens and my early 20s. There's a bit of rock and roll, a bit of pop punk, a bit of emo, a bit of punk rock, post-hardcore, all that good stuff. I mean, I was listening to stuff like Alkaline Trio, Bad Religion, Thrice, Silverstein, My Chemical Romance, Bayside, Billy Talent, Jimmy Eat World, Millencolin, Coheed and Cambria, Sum 41, Matchbook Romance, Hawthorne Heights, and like a lot of other bands as well, and a lot of other genres, but many of those bands, I think there are elements and similarities to those bands throughout this album. And actually the Downtown Struts album that Jack from Waco got us to listen to, I think there's elements of that in there as well, and some elements of the band Baroness as well in some of the vocal delivery. I feel like this is maybe more up my street than it is yours, but I don't know if that's right.
I really enjoyed it, but I knew immediately, I was like, yeah, this is got Snedds written all over it. I don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it. I've kind of described it as a belter of an album. Just in the wee synopsis I've written, kind of lots of feels, big cathartic melodic breakdowns that will make your spine tingle and channel your youth, which is exactly what you said. You know, it reminded me of My Chemical Romance. I think certainly there's a track in this album that was like, yeah, it was maybe the opening track that, for my money, you know, some of the elements within the track reminded me of those kind of big moments from I'm Not Okay, the kind of My
that's
Chemical
exactly
Romance.
what I've said. It's the opening track.
You know, like the Yellow Card, brand new. I kind of got that kind of feel for it. Sorry. Yeah, it was a really, really enjoyable album. They're based in London, though, aren't they?
I think so. I
think
haven't
they're
written
based in
that
London.
down anywhere, but I think so.
Yeah, so obviously they could be from absolutely anywhere, but they definitely sing with that kind of transatlantic American vocals.
Yes, there's not sort of an obvious accent in there, is there?
No.
But there are times where the singer sounds like Alkaline Trio. There are times when the singer sounds like the guy from Baroness. There's a line in that opening track where he says, "I'm addicted to this lifestyle, baby," and it's just the way that's delivered that reminds me of Baroness, because Baroness are a bit more of a sort of heavy metal kind of band.
Do you know, weirdly, there was times where, and this is kind of maybe more, well, we both appreciated them, but there was elements that kind of reminded me of Less Than Jake. Obviously, without the ska, there's absolutely no ska in this whatsoever. But again, I think it's maybe just to do with the kind of delivery of some of the kind of lyrics.
Yeah, and I didn't mention Less Than Jake in that sort of selection of bands in the intro because of the ska. And I was like,
because of the ska.
But yeah, I totally get what you mean. Yeah, there's definitely that opening track. There's definitely that My Chemical Romance. I'm Not Okay. And sort of in the guitars towards the end, and I like the way that song ends. It's got these really sort of metal stabs of guitar just for the last couple of notes. It just kind of brings everything to this kind of crushing full stop, which I really liked.
I kind of felt that way too. Like it kind of opens with this kind of frenetic kind of guitar riff, and that that kind of keeps it with the momentum throughout the course of the song. But I kind of mentioned those kind of revving bangs and stabs in the kind of final throes of the song, which is just, it's just a joy to listen to. I really enjoyed that. I think the band themselves have a kind of real flair for, I suppose it's hooks, you know what I mean, just wee lyrics that just, really earwormy, particularly in the kind of second track, kind of Ask the Dust, which is one of the singles released from the album. So that was released almost a year ago today. It kind of opens with this kind of tight bass line, a kind of math rock-esque kind of guitar riff. There's lots of kind of really kind of melodic vocal melodies throughout the course of the song, but that lyric, Tidal Wave Saves the Day, it is properly infectious, as is I think it's maybe kind of on the outro of the song, but saying goodbye is easier than moving on. I love that. Really enjoyed that. I can't help but kind of bop along to this one.
I like that. I like that track a lot because it's kind of the one that really reminded me of bands like Silverstein and Hawthorne Heights, who they do lots of kind of mathy, techy kind of guitar stabs and squeals and melodic vocals. Although I might be a little embarrassed to admit to listening to Silverstein and Hawthorne Heights, but I did love them back in the day. But Acid Dust is a great song. And then track 3. What is track 3? I don't know if I've written this.
Canada So Light. All one word.
I have written that down. I was reading it and going, surely that's a typo. So I just wanted to check, but Canada So Light.
Canada So Light. I don't know how you're meant to say it.
But it's
all one word.
Yeah. I've just said it's a proper punk rock song. It's got it's got some vocals that remind me a little bit of Baroness on the line. Noise at all. There's a fire at the bottom of my belly and it feels so warm. And then there's a bit of Alkaline Trio and Bayside in the vocals as well. So that's another good song. I think the next track is the one where it really hits a sort of Alkaline Trio kind of vibe. I think the vocals and the lyrics are pretty Alkaline Trio.
So the fourth song I heard, The Siren Scream, kind of reminded me of, remember that old 3 Days Grace song? I Hate Everything About You.
Yeah, I do.
It's a banger of a song. There's something to do with it, again, the inflection on some of the lyrics. I think it's the lyric, I Hope You Die Lonely. That's what kind of reminded me of that track, and I guess there's a kind of similar sentiment.
Well, the lyric is, you're a piece of shit, I hope you die lonely.
Yeah.
which is even better. And it's got a really cool kind of thrice-esque drilling guitar riff at the end as well, which was nice to hear. It's interesting you mentioned that 3 Days Grace song, because as soon as you said it I was like, oh yeah, that's perfect. But the opening track, the riffs that open that up are so familiar to me. I'm like, I know there's a song that sounds almost exactly like that, and I just can't for the life of me figure out what it is. It's been doing my head in, but it's just been winding me up. It's not 3 Days Grace, but it's of that era.
Come to
it's of that era. Well, I've been hoping it would come to me by the time we recorded this, but it hasn't. So we'll see. Answers on a postcard.
It's interesting you say that, actually, because I'm just looking at my notes. Because Watch It Flicker, for me, reminded me of something that I couldn't put my finger on.
Mm-hmm. I like how
it's released from the album as well.
Yeah, I like. Well, that's part of the fun of this album. I think if you liked that sort of all these different bands back in the day, it's quite fun to sort of be like, oh yeah, that sounds a bit like this and that sounds a bit like that. But I like this sort of vacancy in the vocal of the in the vocal delivery. I like how vacant it sounds. It feels quite detached, and it works well with the sort of gloomy instrumentals. And then you've got these emo lyrics of scrape me out of the bottom of this barrel, show me something I can see, show me something that resembles me. So I like how the vocal delivery and the instrumentals and the lyrics are all working together there. It's quite satisfying.
Could you place where the wee audio clip comes from on the 6th track, Lucky Shoes?
No, and I didn't look it up, but I thought it was like Bob Hoskins or something like that, but I don't actually.
Are you going to
know.
do an impression, Snedds?
What does he say? No, I can't do it. I'm cringing. I'm cringing thinking about it.
I'd written it down as well. What was it again?
I've got it written down, but I can't bring myself to try and do an impression of it, because then
take a deep breath.
What is it? What does it even sound like? I can't do
He's an English geezer guy.
Yeah, I want to say it's Bob Hoskins or someone of that ilk, but I'm not going to do it. I'll read you the line, but I'm not going to do the accent.
Read me the line.
It's of course, you know what it's all about these days, don't you? Punk rock. Yeah. But
that's all I can manage.
Yeah, I don't know where that clip's from. But it's then it bursts into this kind of like bouncy, chirpy punk rock riff, which is nice. And there's some bits at the end that sound a little bit like Blink-182. Some nice slinky bass in there as well. That's quite good. Yeah, it's a decent song.
Quite enjoyed the 7th song, Icing on the Horizon. Again, I think there was another single that was released. There was something about the kind of vocal delivery that felt like slightly theatrical, and again, I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Like, for some reason, it kind of reminded me a bit of Creeper.
Yeah,
there was a kind of horror punk aesthetic to it, which kind of took me off guard. But I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I've written the verses alkaline trio to the core, and I can see why you went to Creeper, because Creeper, certainly in their earlier stuff, are very much alkaline trio, horror punky kind of stuff. But yeah, I like that song a lot because I think, well, the guitar line in the intro is one of my favourites on the album, and it's got a really good solo, sort of round about the 2-minute 40 mark, which gives off a bit of a Coheed and Cambria vibe as well, which is nice to hear. I think track 8 is
Turn Your Back.
It's not my favourite track. It's got a lot of the same elements of the other songs, but still decent, but maybe not a standout.
Yeah, I kind of felt the same way with Blue Lights, to be fair. Yeah,
I liked on Blue Lights that's the one that sounds most like a Coheed and Cambria song to me, actually. It's got this guitar lick in it that sounds like the opening line of A Favour House Atlantic, which is the first Coheed song I ever heard. So, and that can never be a bad thing. That's a great song.
No.
And I like the vocal line of there's a way, when there's a will there's a way, there's a way, when there's a will there's a way, there's a way, which I'm obviously not doing any justice to, but it's just a fun part of the song.
Dominoes, like the last song on the album, that was a bit unexpected, I think, because I think, you know, there's a lot of kind of similarities to the other kind of tracks on the album, but there's a kind of big instrumental section, you know, at the very end. It's a bit of a longer song, so it's kind of 4 minutes and 12 seconds, and there's this kind of big kind of proggy kind of spectral elements, kind of a distant kind of guitar kind of shredding in the background, which was quite cool. So although it was unexpected, I did quite enjoy that part of it.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one because it sounds a little bit like Millencolin, or at least parts of it do. There's a particular line, the second my guard's down, you're there with your arms out and I'm scratching at my skin. The way that's delivered just sounds really like Millencolin. And then it goes a sort of, like you say, it goes a bit proggy, it goes a bit shoegazy. And that part of it reminded me of...
Shoegazy is probably the better way of describing it, actually.
Yeah, and it reminded me of the second Give Up to Failure album that we covered. Some of the sort of guitar work on
Cocoon
on that album. Yeah, Cocoon, that's right. And yeah, just some of the sort of lush guitars from that album. So that was nice. That was nice to hear. I think it's a strong conclusion to the album as well. Yeah.
I think it's a great album as well. I mean, again to think this is their debut album, isn't it? I think it is. I think there's maybe been some
check that, but I think
EPs released previously, but
I would like to double check that. Yeah, I think it is their debut album, and a very good album indeed. What score have you given it?
I've given it a 9 out of 10.
Nice. I've given it an 8, so that's even
right,
even worse. It's even more impressive.
They've charmed me. Charmed me.
Yeah, that's brilliant. I mean, like I was saying at the start, like a big part of the reason I like this is because of the nostalgia and sort of hearing those little elements that remind me of the stuff I was listening to years ago, and that kind of fills me with joy. It's not revolutionary by any stretch of the imagination, but if you're a fan of this kind of music, then you'll more than likely fall in love with it. And I mean, if you don't like this music, it's probably not going to convert you.
Yeah,
I mean, which is you could say about a lot of types of music anyway, so it's not really a criticism. So yeah, good album. So that was A Bolt from the Blue by Modern Shakes.
There's still something left. No use at all. There's a fire at the bottom of my belly and it feels so warm. I heard the siren scream, still ringing in my ears. That's how our paths became irrelevant. Punk rock. When I'm dead, don't you dare say sorry. Ankles away. The second my guard's down, you're there with your arms out, and I'm scratching at my skin.
Okay, on to the last one. It's a nice short one. Nice way
do you want me to
round things out.
to go into it?
Yeah, go for it.
Next up, we've got Apricity by VOWER. It's released on the 8th of July, so it's a 4-track EP. So it's just under kind of 20 minutes long, just around the kind of 17-minute mark. So VOWER is a new project formed by British musicians Rabia Masad from Tosca and the Totemist, John McCune from Palm Reader, Rory McLean, Joe Gosney and Liam Kearley, formerly of Black Peaks, and the band themselves are based in Brighton and Hove. As I said, this is their first EP, and just out of interest, Snedds, do you know what apricity means?
No, I didn't actually think to look that up for whatever reason. So
I had no idea what it means, but I'm hoping to crack it out in Scrabble at some point. So it's apparently an English word that means the warmth of the sun in winter.
Ah, right, okay. That's lovely.
That is lovely. Yeah. That is lovely. So they're self-described a powerful blend of post-punk atmospheric soundscapes, progressive metals, expansive, structured and raw energy of post-hardcore. And the first song, Shroud, doesn't disappoint. It kind of really hits the ground running, particularly with those kind of screaming, raw, guttural, kind of post-hardcore vocals, which, interestingly, I thought kind of quite quickly morphed and take on an almost mystical aesthetic, which for kind of my money was kind of reminiscent of the likes of Serge Tankian, so from the kind of lead vocalist from System of a Down. It's complete with kind of crashing guitars, some pretty kind of heavy kind of breakdowns in the second part of the song, which is kind of interspersed with some kind of real cathartic, melodic kind of vocal sections, which I really enjoyed. What was your thoughts, my man?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, the vocals on that opening track come in pretty hot. They're aggressive, they're abrasive. The instrumentals are a bit calmer, but there's a sort of powerful undertone in the background. And the vocals are really impressive. I wasn't all that familiar with Palm Reader. I've heard the odd track, but Josh McKeown, their former vocalist, is he's impressive.
See, I'm not familiar with any of the bands. I think I know Black Peaks. I certainly recognise the name, but I'd be struggling to name a Black Peaks song.
Yeah, so I'm quite a fan of Black Peaks, and I can't even remember when they broke up, probably a couple of years by now, but there are some similarities with the sound of this EP and Black Peaks' output. There's the sort of elements of progressive metal and post-hardcore, so there are similarities. So I think if you were fans of Black Peaks, and probably a Palm Reader, and I'm not familiar with the
Totemist.
I'm not familiar with Tosca or the Totemist, but I think if you're a fan of Palm Reader and or Black Peaks, then although I don't think they're like all that similar, but I think if you're a fan of either of those bands, you should enjoy VOWER. And so there's that sort of kind of grandiose progressive element to it, and I mentioned Dune right at the start of the podcast, when the band, not the musical,
not the films,
and there's that kind of, it's the sort of waves of like beauty, I guess. Like there's sort of passages of like more calm, more melodic sections, and then you get these crashing waves of heaviness, which, I mean, that's a feature of kind of progressive metal, but it's really impressive here. That sort of mixture of serenity and extremity. And the vocals are fantastic. There's just something about the way the Queen vocals kind of blend into the screams, at the end of a line, or as it moves through different vocal sections. Really impressive. And Shroud is a great opening track, followed up by In the Wake of Failure, which slips into something a little bit more calm to begin with, at least, and then you've got these kind of ebbs and flows, and then builds into this huge soaring vocal that goes, when we become one mind in the wake of failure, do their lies hold the weight. And it's a really impressive moment with these crashing drums and hulking riffs, and it just makes that kind of slow build really worth it.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Really like the third song on the track as well, so False Rituals. I've said that's an absolute kind of banger of a song. Really enjoyed. Again, it's kind of on the outro, but this kind of interesting, almost like kind of mantra, kind of gang vocals of that kind of on the lyric, trust in false rituals. Again, which for my money kind of took on a bit of that kind of mystical aesthetic, which is kind of mentioned in the kind of first song, Shroud, which I really enjoyed as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's. I think that song's got some of the best screams on the EP. And then you've got the last track, Eyes of a Nihilist, which is probably my favourite song out of the 4 tracks.
I thought the vocals, again, I think the vocals were slightly different on this track for whatever reason, and it felt as if it was kind of channeling some kind of late great Chris Cornell. Like, I kind of got a bit of kind of Audioslave, Soundgarden vibes from it.
Fair enough. I mean, I didn't go there, but you could be right. I think the melodies to the vocals in particular on that track are the best of the four, and it's the riffs on there are monstrous, and then you get a nice kind of punishing scream in the sort of final minute as well, which is always nice. So if you like that kind of thing, of course. So yeah, I think it's pretty short. There's only 4 tracks, although it's it's still 18
it's still
minutes.
17 minutes. Yeah, it's still 17 minutes, because that's what I've kind of written. Like, I thought it's a very strong EP, and those 17 minutes, you think it's over 4 songs. I mean, it goes by in a flash. It is like the brief warming of the sun, transient. And but it's not. The thing is, it's not. But you could be forgiven for thinking it's a lot shorter than it is, and I think that's because you just lose yourself listening to it in a good way.
Yeah, I think you can criticise kind of progressive music for being, sometimes it could be you're kind of waiting around. Yeah, and you're waiting around for something to happen and you kind of lose interest. But it's not a criticism that can be levelled at this. Like you say, it goes by in a flash. You don't sort of, you're never bored at any point. So yeah, a really good debut EP. So it'll be interesting to see what these guys do next. And it's it's a new EP, but they're
accomplished musicians.
They're accomplished musicians who've proven themselves in several in a few different other popular bands. So it's it's not that surprising really when you think about it.
What did you rate it, Snedds?
So I've given this an 8 out of 10 as well.
Yeah, I think that's fair, man.
Yeah, really good, and it'll scratch a bit of that itch if you miss Black Peaks and Palm Reader. So definitely worth a listen.
Nice.
Punk rock. Punk rock.
Punk rock.
When this is chopped up and everything is separated out into individual reviews, that will make no sense.
That's a good point.
Anyway, let's just leave it out of context. So that was the Apricity EP from VOWER. So there you go, that's episode 28 of the Scratch Cast done and dusted. If you're listening to this, we re-recorded, screwed that up. That's supposed to be a nice little joke. We'll try it again. If you're listening to this, I can't do it. I've ruined it. This won't even be worth it now. If you're listening to this, we recorded the episode 17 months ago. That might have worked. I'd fucked it up like 3 times in a row.
Just adds to the charm, Snedds. Just adds to the charm.
Adds to the ramshackle nature of this. So anyway, please send us your thoughts on the music we've covered, and if you like any of the bands or artists we've talked about, let us know, and make sure you send the artists some love too. If you want to support the show, you can subscribe to the Scratchcast to hear our voices wherever you get your podcasts. Alternatively, you can watch our faces on YouTube. Wherever you find us, please leave us a nice review and give us a wee share. It all helps spread the good word.
I've convinced my boss to subscribe. If that's a good thing or a bad thing, I might not have a job come Monday morning.
Could be a disaster.
It could be.
What is this shit? I'm offended by how awful this is.
You've disgraced your profession.
Well, on that
Never mind.
On that recommendation, if you feel like it, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. The link is in the episode description. Still no one's bought us a coffee. That's horrendous. That's terrible. I mean,
lips are dry.
We could just buy ourselves a coffee and we wouldn't have to plead poverty on a podcast that comes out once every 6 months. If you'd like your music to be featured on the podcast, then send us your submissions to the headscratcher@outlook.com or message us directly on Facebook and Instagram at the Headscratcher or on Twitter at ScratcherHead. And don't forget, you can also head over to theheadscratcher.com for reviews, recommendations, playlists, interviews, and all the previous episodes of the podcast. The alternative music playlist number 45, featuring music from May to August 2024, is not out now. And it'll be out. I don't know when it'll be out, but it will be out. But it's not out now. These notes are atrocious. Anyway, once it appears, there are hours and hours and hours of music in there. I think the last playlist came out, number 44. That came out just before we recorded the last podcast. So I've got a playlist, number 45. It hasn't come out, but it's got something like 1,600 songs in it. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I need to start going through these, and I'm just so overwhelmed by it. I'm like, that's a lot of songs.
That's a lot of songs.
It's probably going to be split up into at least 2 parts at this point, but that's if it ever comes out. So we'll see. You never know. Anyway, if you've made it this far, all that's left to say is thanks for listening, and as always, please tell your friends, your colleagues, your parents, and your pets. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye! I was
waiting for you to do it.
Bye! Well, I was actually thinking in my head, I was going to say, like, in January 2025 or something, but I kind of held off. Anyway, I think I might have made that joke before, so I'm sure I have. I've probably made it about 5 times at this point. Anyway, bye!
I better go before Kerry divorces me.
Oh yeah, it's late as fuck, isn't it? I didn't realise the time.
She's been stranded up in the bedroom,
up in the attic, banished to the loft.
It's not finished. It's finished.